Hello, welcome to Money, Markets, and Motivation with Mike. This is brought to you for information and educational purposes only. It is your responsibility to do your own due diligence to do what is right for your account. So let us go over to our word of the day. Our word of the day is tohu bohu, which means a state of chaos, utter confusion. And one of the examples is the mayor's sudden resignation left the city council in tohu bohu. So that is a noun. And now we're going to go over to our chill map today because it is a bunch of chill. Wow, Palantir actually bounced back. It was off, I believe, 2.5%. Nvidia was about the same. All the banks are down. Communications, Google and Meta are down. Consumer cyclical, Tesla and Amazon are down. Apple is down about 1%. People are kind of overreacting about the judges disqualifying the tariffs which has helped put down some of our high debt load that is out there and will trim some of the interest repayments. So we'll just kind of see. I'm sure it's going to be appealed and go to the next level. So that is the story with the markets for now. Let's go over to the cryptos. And they got a little bit of a bounce in Bitcoin, ADA, Solana, and BCH. I'm not sure if I know what that one is. XRP is bouncing as well. So that is the story with those. So let us stop the share for a moment. So we're just going to go over to our annuity. You're getting close to retirement and you're at all worried that our high peak dollars in the stock market, you might want to consider putting a portion of your portfolio in here because it goes up when the market goes up. It does not go down when the market goes down. And as we look back, 54% retracement in the markets in 2008 was a painful experience. Everybody said their 401k become a 201k. You don't want to let that happen to you if you're going into retirement. As you can see, it beats index investing by about 5% per year. That's a big amount. So that is the story with annuities. People talk about how much they cost. Um, Really, 54% haircut is something that you don't have to pay. So that is the cost. People are talking about variable annuities having a high cost. Well, this is a fixed index annuity, which I'm talking about. So if you want to learn more about that, please contact me. And in the meantime, let's go over to look at our indexes. So this is ATRO. Tried to move into the pivot zone, pulls back pretty strong. Pulls back to the 10-day moving average, which isn't really too bad. May set up again, so that may be worth taking a look at. The one stock that is doing pretty well is Bitcoin miner IREN, Australia-based Bitcoin mining company. It's up close to 10% per day. But we are going to go look at our indexes first. So the NASDAQ pulls back to its 50-day and then bounces off of it, down 0.84%. This is healthy. It was getting pretty stretched from the 200-day, and it was getting stretched from the 50-day as well. So we'll just see where this all takes us. This is equal weight in the NASDAQ. It gaps down. It's below all the major moving average. Just never can tell how far this is going to go down. Could continue for a while. Could turn into a correction. Something like this. This is pretty ugly. That's why we say anything that goes below the 20-day moving average, you should take your profits. Take your profits when you have them. Otherwise, you'll be selling at a much lower cost down much later. So let's take a look at the S&P 500. It slices below the 20-day and then fights back to get right back there. It is off 0.73% and it is up after hours. So we'll see where this all heads. The equal weight slices through the 20-day and then bounces back, gets support. It's off 0.77% for the day. The Russell 2000 small cap index falls to its 10-day moving average and then bounces. It's up down 0.54%. It's kind of muted, didn't even get up to the average daily volume. Volume is off 5%. And then we'll go to the Dow Jones. Fell 500 points, I believe, and then bounced back off of the 20-day moving average, gets back to the 10-day. So all in all, not too bad of a pullback on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Look at the financials, pull back to the 20-day, and then come back above the 10-day. KBWB pulls back to the 10-day and then bounces. It's off 1.03%. We're going to go now to the VIX. VIX is opposite of the S&P 500, so it should be moving up. It is a fear index. It gaps up. So we have another gap to fill. 99.95% of all gaps fill on the VIX. So we got a gap to fill here. And I believe we have a gap. Yeah, we have a gap up here. So which one of them will fill first? That is a big question. Let's go over to our 10-year Treasury. We got a big gap up in the Treasury, up 1.18% today, up to 4.28% interest. Let's go over to the 20-year Treasury. Got a big gap up there, up 1.54%, up to 3.69% interest. Look at the bonds. Big gap down in pricing. So I believe that's $856.30 a bond. So that means the interest went up. So interest and pricing in the bonds move in opposite directions. We'll continue on now to aerospace. Initially sold off and got a pretty strong bounce there, up only 0.04% for the day. And let's see, this is commercial services. Initially sold off, bounced off the 20-day, cleared the 10-day, off 0.2% for the day. Utilities sell off, fall below their 50-day moving average. Real estate sells off as bond interest price goes up. Biotech. Oh, interesting. Biotech is where the big money is flowing, it looks like. Got a big gap up. It gets into the pivot zone Look at that, up 3.37% on the day. On an ETF, that is truly incredible. IBB up not as much, 1.58%. Software falls to its 10-day moving average. Interesting. The 50-day is above the 20 and the 10-day. That's not too good of a sign. XLK technology falls to its slices through its 50-day and then fights to stay back there, down 1.01%. Infrastructure slices through its 20-day and then fights to get pretty close to it, is off 0.84%. Semiconductors fall below their 50-day, down 1.31%. NVIDIA had a big fall and then fights back to get to its 50-day. Look at that move on Broadcom. That's pretty interesting. Falls to its 50-day and then fights to get above its 10 and 20-day moving average. Take a look at Taiwan Semiconductor, big gap down. Micron sold off and trying to fight back to get to its 50. Got three averages converging at the same spot right there. Jets look like they remain pretty steady. Industrials, big gap down in industrials as well, down close to 1%. Healthcare, got a nice little bounce in healthcare, is holding steady there. Consumer staples falls below with the 200-day average again. Consumer discretionary, this is where Amazon and Tesla are, bounces off of the 20-day after slicing through the 10-day, off 0.72%. Building materials slices through the 10-day and then fights to stay above it, off 0.75%. Mining and metals sells off to the 10-day and then bounces back, still off 1% for the day. Home builders fall to the 20-day and bounce, off 0.88%. Finally, uranium sells off to the 50-day and then bounces above all moving averages here. So that is the story. Now we're going to see where the big money is flowing. There are 25 items. We're not going to go through all, but this is IREN. Right over here, I think I was telling that headed into a power trend. Went up here, and it just continues to jackknife higher. Look at the volume on Friday, and then the volume here on Tuesday. The Porch Group, software to more than 30,000 home service industries. Looks like it's pretty well extended. $8.48. $8 and actually 58 cents was a breakout. It sold off. I guess you could have bought right here, maybe at $12.30. Got another sell-off here. Could bought again, added to it at $14.44. So for my case, though, it's pretty well extended from the 50-day moving average at this point. Definitely put it on your watch list. Echo Star. Wow, we got a lot of extended stocks here. Up 5.58%. Right over here was the biggest volume in the base. Still pretty good volume right here. The Sound Group, this is an ADR from Singapore. Huge volume right over here. Earnings came in at a 443% increase year over year quarter. Wasn't not an earnings surprise, but look at this volume here. So Liquida jumps up 3.25%. Pretty good volume over here. It is pretty well extended from, I would say, the 1951. You could actually bought it at 1870. So it is pretty well extended from that mark. SSR Mining jumps up to $20. Another one that's pretty well extended, 1358 would have been the buy point. Probably on this gap up right over here. Core Mining, another extended stock as it keeps heading up, another 3.88%. Earnings are supposed to be up 323% this year and another 9% next year. A lot of mining stocks. In the top 10, Cipher Mining. Now this looks like a little bit more appetizing. Not as well extended, but it still is extended. $7.20 would have been the buy point. Looks like it just headed off into a power trend a few days ago. I guess right on this day right here. So earnings are up 900%. This was a 221% earnings surprise. NuScale Power had a big sell-off here, needs to work on the right side of the base here. I would put it on your watch list, up 7.47%. For all of my concern, I would want it to clear this 50-day moving average before issuing a buy. Xometry, kind of extended, is cleared the profit zone over here. I would wait for another base to set up. Yeah, there's a lot of mining with this First Majestic Silver, Alamos Gold, CVI Energy. Pretty nice move here. This could be an early buy opportunity right over here. Huge volume. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4 days in a row. Pretty huge volume. And back here, highest volume in the base. So obviously there's some institutional management moving into this stock. Earnings next year is supposed to be up 286%. Engaged in refining and marketing of petroleum products in Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Texas. Tower Semiconductor. Yeah, this one is pretty well extended. It has extended past the profit zone. I'd wait for another base to set up. I guess you could look at way out here. Has cleared this big cup formation right here. Harmony Gold Mining, another gold miner. See what Ulta Beauty is doing. Earnings are up 9%. Kind of an ugly kind of base here. And a big sell-off, and then a big buyback here, up 8%. Arrowhead Pharmaceuticals, huge move right here. I believe they had a story on them today in the news, up 16.57%. One of their drugs, I think, came out with some pretty good clearance. Let's see what Ionis Pharma. Oh, this was with Ionis Pharma actually hit a home run in triglyceride treatment. Arrowhead jumps after it inked a deal up $2.2 billion. Let's just take a look at that. It's teaming up with Novartis for an experimental Parkinson drug. They'll get $200 million up front and up to $2 billion with additional milestones. So that's kind of what's happening there. And right over here, we can see right here on this day, it headed into a power trend. Well, not quite into a power trend. I guess it would have to be on Thursday of last week. It went into a power trend and is continuing higher. Relative strength. It's not quite at a new high, but it's getting pretty close. This one probably deserves a little more investigation. So that is everything for our chart reading today. I'm going to just scan a couple of more, see if we have any other interesting charts that we haven't covered. So this is a double bottom right here. I think it's like the second most prevalent formation. So it creates a W. The second bottom needs to undercut the previous bottom, which it did. 37.32 went down to 35.95. And then it needs to clear the middle of the W, which was 50.60. So it needs to go up to 50.70 to be a buy. It did that and then sold off again. So this was a little bit volatile. You would have need to get out to protect your capital at 5 to 8%. And now it's trying to set up again. So I'd continue to watch this, see if it can get into the pivot zone and move higher. But as we saw earlier, the biotech ETF is doing pretty well. The biotech ETF might be a little safer bet, XBI or either IBB. So that is that. And now we're going to go over to our quote of the day. Financial quote of the day. So number 35, if you have trouble imagining a 20% loss in the stock market, you shouldn't be in stocks. John Bogle, famous investor, I believe his fund was Vanguard. So that is our show for today. Thanks for tuning in to Money, Markets, and Motivation with Mike. Hope everybody has a great day. And everybody, you take care. Seems like at some point our screen stopped sharing. Not sure where that was, but scan through this and we may need to do the show over again.